this tutorial, we'll take you through TerraFlat and the workflow from going from a 3D model to a 2D flat pattern. And when you load TerraFlat into Rhino, you'll see this toolbar. We have about 18 tools that show up. And I'm going to go through each one of these tools individually and show you how they work. So the first thing we want to do is go into Rhino and we'll open up a car seat that was modeled in Rhino. As you can see, let's rotate the seat, but it is a 3D model of a car seat. And we're going to flatten this car seat. So the first tool that we'll use is this tool that is at the far left, which basically says select the pieces that you want flattened. Now in TerraFlat, you can either select individual pieces, or you can rectangle select the whole piece that you wish flattened. In this case, what I'll do is simply select this piece, and we'll just do the top surface of the file. Once I've selected the pieces I want flattened, I simply hit enter in the keyboard. Next thing I want to do is turn on my layers in Rhino. So I type in layer, and once I've done that, my layers show up here on the right side of the screen. I'll go down to here where it says TerraFlat pattern, and I'll just highlight that, checkbox that. Then I'll go in and I'll turn off all the 3D model layers of the part because I'm only concerned with the 2D flat piece right now. I'll expand my top view, and as we can see, the wireframe of the pieces which we've selected. I also want to go in and I'll right click and go to a rendered state on these pieces. So it'll show the stress on the piece itself. Now if you go to this tool here, which is the TerraFlat options, and click this, it'll bring up our options in TerraFlat. And I want to go to the legend. The legend will show the different stress that's on the part. And we go from minus 0.5, which would be a sag, up to 20%, which is 20% stress on the material, and that's indicated by this red color here. Now these colors can be chosen by the operator, so you can select any color that you like to show. But in this case, I'm just going to leave it as it is. I'll just hit OK here. The next tool that we'd like to use is the flatten tool. I'll click this, which is indicated by a spring. Go here, and we'll flatten or spring these pieces. So we simply select the pieces we wish flattened, again hitting enter on our keyboard. Once we do that, we see the spring status show up here, and it'll go through each one. It's going through the first piece, but it'll go through all 7 pieces and give us our result. Now that our piece is completely flat, there's some tools that are useful. One of them is this fine tool. So basically find pieces that are matching, and in the fabric industry sometimes they call this walking a pattern. And I just click this and can go in and I can actually find where our joining pieces should match our flat, selecting the pieces that should go to recreate basically the model. So here we have those pieces. As I said, this is sometimes called walking the pattern. Another tool that's useful, and I'll just move these pieces back out, but once I've designed the car seat, and I could go back in and say, you know what, instead of having 4 pieces here, maybe all I want is one single piece. So I can go to this tool, which basically says select any manual or automatic cuts to be deleted. I'll click on here and I'll go in and I can now sew these pieces back together. So we have those pieces put back together. Once I do that though, I want to go back in and I want to spring this piece, because you can see there's a little bit of stress that's been added to this piece when I've sewn them all together, which would make sense. So I'll click this, hit enter on my keyboard, and I'll simply go through and reflatten that piece. And now we have a piece that's ready to go out for cutting. Now, depending upon seam allowance, which again, another fabric term, I can go in to my options, go into my settings, and I can show here where it says export the file, the DXF seam allowance. Now, say in this car seat, I want to set this at 1/2 inch. I can either slide this or I can manually type in 1/2 inch. Just hit OK. Once that's done, when I export the file out as a DXF, the cutter will see that as a 1/2 inch seam allowance and automatically add that to the piece. The next tool that we'd want to use would be the notching tool. And the notching tool puts notches on the piece and also on the corresponding piece. So we'll just go in here, select the notching tool, and as soon as we do that, a dialog box appears. Now we hit add, and it'll allow us to add notches to our piece. As we add this notch to this piece, the corresponding piece also has a notch, exactly where the piece would be sewn together. So if we go around here and we add our notches into our pieces, we'll see exactly how these pieces would be notched together. I'll just add one more notch here. Now, if I right click on my mouse, it'll bring up the notch tool dialog box, and these can be changed. So instead of notch 7, we could call this A, and this one we could call B. And just highlight this, call this C, D, so on and so on. Hit escape. Now when we export this file as the DXF, these notches will all show up right here. Now I may want to go back and use the Find tool again, and if I just click on the notch, it'll put these pieces back where they would go. So we have our piece now ready to export. We've added our seam allowance of 1/2 inch, and we've also added our notching information. So when they go back to sew these pieces together, we have notches that will allow the sewer to see exactly where all the pieces should go back together. Okay, so now let's move our pieces back, and I'll go into the notching tool again. And if I want to remove any of these notches that I've put on the piece, simply go here and select the piece that I want to take the notches or remove the notches from, and simply hit remove. these notches here. I can also change the color of the notch to make it any color I'd like. So let's use, say, blue notching. Simply hit OK, and it'll change the notches that I've selected to blue. So in this case I've changed A to blue, and I have C, D as still red. Once we've added our notching information to the file, the last step is to export it as a DXF for our plotter or our cutter. So what I'll do now is simply close our dialog box for the notches, and I'll go up to this tool here, which is Export Flattened Pieces to DXF. Click on this, and we've selected DXF file, and we're going to basically create the seat from this, and let's open the file up and see what we have. So we go into DXF and go to our seat file, and there we are. So basically the information here on our layers gives us our grain direction, which is this line here. Also, it gives us our cut, which is the red line here, is our cut. Our notch information, which we added, which shows up as these green tags here, as you can see. Our notch tag information is all on this, and our original cut line is in blue. So our cut line's blue, and our seam allowance is red. The green tags are the notch, and we have the C that we added along with that notch piece. So this is, in essence, taking a 3D car seat model and going right through to flattening it, ready to export out to our plotter or our cutter.